Hello and welcome to Laguna Seca for round 8 of the UF1R World Championship. I'm Ed and I'm going to take you through the events of the race. Before this 71 lap race in California, let's take a quick look at the Drivers' Championship. Sammy has a 19-point gap to his arch rival Roy. Moggius has consistently been racking up the third places and is 30 points behind Roy. As ever, qualifying was hotly contested. Let's take a look at how the grid formed up. As we all expected, Sammy once again took pole with a time of 48.621, Roy just a couple of tenths behind him on the front row. Edster was making his return to the championship, starting in third place. Moggius qualified fourth, then it was Schumi and Skoda forming an all-French row 3. Lorino lined up alongside his Russian nemesis Diablo on row 4, followed by Swiss Yeti and Real Salvador. Grant and Coldline were 11th and 12th, then it was Gustoon next to the absent Missoir. Then the final row was occupied by Carrot and Doof Doof, the last qualifier, whilst Justin, who finished 5th in the previous race, failed to set a time and had to apply for special dispensation to be able to start. So Sammy on the left, Roy Boy on the right in what was to be an intensely fought race. At the green light, only Carrot ran into trouble, jumping the start slightly. He would receive a penalty come the end of the race. Everyone else got away cleanly in what was the second restart. Schumi has a great run through the first corner, passing Roy for third. The Australian is being cautious, and rightly so. Sammy then goes too wide, hitting the wall and losing several places. Suddenly, Schumi assumes the lead. Roy attacks Edster and the Englishman messes up the corkscrew. He's looking a little rusty on his race return, and his mistake has allowed Moggius to close up on him. In the past, the Frenchman was dealt with pretty swiftly, but he's learnt a lot while Ed's been away and is starting to give him a hard time. At the final corner, Edster inches ahead, while Moggius falls into the clutches of Sammy. The Belgian then brakes early, allowing Moggius to pull back alongside. Suddenly, Ed has a big lift through the high-speed section and they both get through, Sammy retaking Moggius. But Moggy is no pushover. Heading into the corkscrew for the second time, he gives Sammy the slip and re-emerges back in third place. Meanwhile, Grant, having made a good start, goes too wide and drops several places. Him, Coldline, Lorino and Diablo would be among the players fighting for 6th place. Back at the front, and Moggius again gets a poor run through the last corner, letting Sammy back through as Edster seeks to also find a way through. Ed outbrakes Moggius for turn 1, but the move was not destined to work out. Meanwhile, Skoda's car stopped mysteriously with electrical issues, but he was able to get going again, almost plumb last. At this point, Roy finally makes his move, getting a better run up the hill and taking the lead of the race. Schumi fights back though, as on the next lap Roy lifts. But he's able to pull back alongside the NGM driver through the second uphill section. Schumi's impressive defence is helping Sammy close in on his title rival, and Roy has to go around the outside of the Frenchman, the long left-hander, to retake the lead. Swiss Yeti heads a train of cars and Grant tries to make a move for this 6th place, but he comes unstuck as he loses the positions he just gained. Now Sammy was next to try and pass Schumi. He could see Roy beginning to edge away and couldn't afford to let the Australian eat into his championship lead. A decisive pass at the last turn gives him 2nd place. Near the back, Carrot, Gustoon and Justin have an entertaining scrap over 13th place, proving that even lower down the competition remains as fierce as ever. Schumi was under pressure again. This time it's Moggius looking to knock him off the podium. The fellow Frenchman shows no mercy and slipstreams past on the straight. After his great start, it's all starting to fall apart a bit here for Schumi. 11 minutes in and Swiss Yeti is under pressure from Lorino for 8th place. Lorino tries an aggressive dive underneath and it works, but the Yeti has a few tricks up his sleeve. Lorino is starting to get impatient. He can't afford to be held up by the UF1R driver any longer, with Diablo closing in behind as well. Going over the jump, he lands a little too close to the right and drops to 10th. Diablo is then able to pass Swiss Yeti for 8th. 15 minutes in and Carrot's car, as well as his race, come to an abrupt end. Now Edster wants a piece of Schumi. He tries to dive in at the final corner but doesn't have the confidence to get back on the power, and Schumi retains the place. Meanwhile, Sammy is all over the back of Roy's car and challenging for the lead. The Belgian driver makes it look easy, but he hasn't seen the back of Roy just yet. Coldline has had a clean run to 6th so far, but Diablo has been showing some much better pace and coasts up to the back of him. He dives down the inside at turn 1, and it's a textbook move. 19 minutes in and it's Justin who is first to pit. He's gone for pit bay 2. The next lap there is a huge rush into the pits. Coldline opting for pit bay 3, whilst Gustoon, Grant and Skoda all stop in pit bay 2. Then both leaders enter pit bay 1, shadowed by Swiss Yeti, who is a lap down. Next are the drivers in 3rd, 4th and 5th, who all choose different strategies. Moggius goes for bay 1, Edster for bay 2 and Schumi for bay 3. Unfortunately, Real Salvador has to wait for his stop. He's picked up a speeding penalty. Sammy and Roy now leave the pits. Sammy getting a slow exit, giving Roy the opportunity to sweep back into the lead. Edster exits his stop ahead of Schumi due to taking on less fuel. The last few drivers to make their stops are Diablo, who goes for pit bay 1, then Real Salvador, Doof and Lorino going into pit bay 2. "23 minutes in and Sammy is really starting to pressurise Roy for the lead of the race, and with a well-judged move he is able to slip by into the corkscrew. But this simply won't do for Roy. He's fed up of staring at the gearbox of Sammy's machine, and going into turn 1, he attempts to dive up the inside. After an awkward landing, Roy starts to pull away, but, as we've seen time and time again, Sammy is ferocious in his desire to never give in. After getting back through, Sammy goes airborne and Roy finds himself ducking and diving, desperately searching for a ray past. You can be sure of one thing though, both drivers are putting absolutely everything on the line as they go side by side for corner after corner. It's a beautiful duel and the outcome won't be decided until the very end. After much toing and froing, Roy is just able to squeeze through on the uphill section. At 26 minutes now, Doof makes a catastrophic error. We can only hope he's okay because it's a long way down. Roy then hits the wall, losing the lead back to Sammy. Swiss Yeti leaves the braking a little too late and over he goes. That's his race done after 31 minutes. 40 minutes in and the leaders both come in to make their final stops in pit bay 2. They'll be going flat out to the finish now after this. Moggius comes in from third, sticking to the exact same strategy. As a result, Edster comes through to lead the race thanks to his longer stop earlier on. In come a sequence of drivers stopping in pit bay 2. First it's Diablo. Next up Justin, looking a little second hand with no rear wing. And finally Gustoon. Also making sure they're fielded to the end are Lorino entering pit bay 1. And Grant doing likewise. Finally, at 46 minutes, Edster has to stop as Sammy and Roy retake their place at the head of the field. But as he comes into pit bay 1, where is Ed going to come out in his fight with Schumi and Moggius? Through comes Schumi. And Moggius as well, so it hasn't worked out for Edster. He'll have to make some passes on track if he wants that podium. Real Salvador now makes his final stop. 47 minutes elapsed now and Sammy makes the same mistake he did on lap 1. Now it starts to get serious as Roy has a poor run out of the last turn and Sammy chomps through the gap between them like some kind of shark on wheels. Sammy aims it up the inside and he's through. What can Roy do in response? The Aussie makes a brave lunge, but it's too deep. Skoda suddenly grinds to a halt, this time for good. Roy's not done with Sammy yet as he dives into the corkscrew and makes the move stick from very far back. Suddenly Roy gets out of shape on the curb and that's all the chance that Sammy needs to slip by. 55 minutes in and Sammy hits the corkscrew. He's going to have to pull all the stops out to keep Roy behind. And now Roy tries desperately to stick to the outside and there's nothing between them. He's right with him. It's simply too close to call. Looks like Sammy is just ahead right now. But Roy gets a better run into the corner. Only a handful of laps left now. Sammy's front wing parts company. He doesn't need it. And look at the way they're both pushing their cars. Both right on the limit as Sammy tries to ease it for up the inside and makes it work just about. But Roy hasn't gone away and indeed hasn't given up either. Now he's inching ahead a bit. Sammy goes for the inside but Roy's still coming back at him. This is amazing. A truly exceptional fight between the two best players on track at the moment. And now, just when you think Sammy has the advantage, Roy dives up the inside. It's all going to plan for Roy, but this is where Sammy shows his mettle. Into the back straight, it's all about maximising exit speed, which Sammy does incredibly well. Starting to pull along to Roy. Sammy going through, but Roy tries to cut back down underneath. He needs this win too. They've both driven superbly, but one of them has to lose out. Roy determined for it not to be him. He pulls alongside Sammy, but Sammy gets the better exit, and it looks like Sammy has done enough to pull away. 59 minutes in and Schumi is running out of fuel. He has to pit from third place. Moggius is now in a podium position, but he must ward off the attack from the much more experienced Edster. Going into the penultimate lap and Ed has a run on him. Going to the outside. Cold line ahead of them, about to be lapped as Moggius slows, and this is what Edster's looking for. He goes through. Moggius has to dig deeper than deep now to find something to get back on the podium. Oh, as Edster goes a bit wide. Moggius now back in position as they go up the hill. Edster gets another run. Edster looks to have done it, but going into the corkscrew he goes wide, and Moggius is back on the podium. And now, after a superlative drive, it's Sammy who crossed the line to win the Laguna Seca Grand Prix. Roy Boy will be second. And we wait now to find out which of these two is going to finish third. It looks like it's not enough for Edster. Moggius will take the podium. Edster will be fourth on his return. Schumi comes home a slightly disappointing fifth. And behind him, Diablo holds off Lorino to take sixth place. Lorino seventh. Grant will be eighth. Then it's Cold Line in ninth. And rounding out the top 10 will be Justin. There was a surprise change to the bottom step of the podium. Apparently, Moggius had jumped one of his pit stops by a fraction of a second, but this was enough to earn him a 25-second penalty, thereby handing the place to a very fortunate Edster. The race, though, would live long in the memory for the epic battle between Roy and Sammy that ended in the Belgian's favour and increased his lead in the championship. Schumi had a fantastic start, but in the end his strategy proved to be costly. Diablo and Lorino were best of the rest, taking home a good points haul between them, and you had to feel sorry for Swiss Yeti, thrown out the track while running in 8th place. So, let's have a quick look at the Drivers' Championship. Sammy has increased his lead to 24 points over Rory. Lorino has managed to move up to 4th and Diablo up to 9th. And right at the back, Edster managed to get some points on the board and is now in 20th place. On Sunday we'll have our last race of the year, but we'll continue in 2015. Thanks for watching and Merry Christmas. Then it was Schumi and Skoda forming an all-French row 3. Ooh la la, c'est la vie. They are followed on the group by Real Yeti and Swiss Salva. Oh fuck. Schumi fights back though. Yes he does. Lower down, Carrot, Gustoon and Justin have an entertaining scrap over 13th place, proving that even lower down, the competition remains as fierce as ever. I just said lower down twice, didn't I? 11 minutes in and Swiss Yeti makes a mistake. And so do I. But this simply won't do for Roy. He is fed up of staring at the gearbox of Sammy what? But, as we've seen time and time again, Sammy's ferocious.